Welcome back to Switch Stars, my name's Luke, and today on the channel I have an awesome little title for you which goes by the name of NEScape. Now, you know that I love a good puzzle game and I'm especially fond of escape the room type ones, and NEScape is exactly that. But what makes this one particularly interesting is that it was originally released on an NES cartridge, hence the visual aesthetics, but publisher 8-Bit Legit and developer Can Games have just ported it to Switch and Xbox consoles for us all to enjoy. So without further ado, let's get into it, and don't forget to drop a like if you enjoy this one, and subscribe to the channel for more Switch related content. So no real story with this one, you're basically dropped into a dark room and tasked with escaping it, and for obvious reasons I'm going to try and avoid spoilers the best I can. But your first puzzle actually comes right away on the title screen, and I really thought this was an awesome way to kick things off. Now, the game is comprised of 4 individual chapters, and being a part of an NES game, due to the limited amount of memory on the cartridges, all chapters take place within the same room. But the way in which the resources have been utilised is very inventive, and the developer's creativeness means the room itself feels a lot bigger than the mere 4 walls that it's comprised of. Like I said though, you have 60 minutes from which to escape the room, and when it comes to the controls, they're incredibly simple. You control an on-screen cursor in the shape of an eyeball, which is used to interact with both features in the room and the objects in your inventory seen at the bottom of the screen, and everything is done with a single button, with the cursor icon switching to a magnifying glass to indicate something can be interacted with. Using objects in your inventory is a simple process of selecting and highlighting them and then clicking on something in the room or another object within your inventory to combine them, and this system works well, though I will say that it can be a little tricky to select smaller room features, and there's no on-screen indicator that you're trying to use an item with something. Now, progression through the game involves a combination of collecting items, switching between the 4 different walls and interacting with features, which include things like lockboxes, puzzles and other objects, and each of the chapters introduces new puzzles which link back to existing features, so there's a lot of back and forth with identifying which of them are relevant in any particular chapter. When it comes to the puzzles themselves, there's some really good variety here. You'll find a combination of minigames which include things like a cool little ball maze and a spot the difference minigame, interactive and audio based puzzles, as well as some requiring the use of inventory items. And while I can't say that I found any of them to really be entirely unique, the way in which they were implemented into the environments made them feel much more connected rather than just individual elements, which of course is a defining feature of any escape the room style game, but I often find that in many of these games, the connection between elements can be a little obscure. Thankfully in NEScape, the puzzles are all pretty logical, and the developers make good use of the limited colour palette to direct players on what they should be focusing on, as well as some well-defined visual and audio cues to help with puzzle solving. Though I will admit, on a couple of occasions I did get a little stumped and had to consult the guide to ensure I was on the right track, which it turns out I was, but I just couldn't nail down the logical connection between things. Now, inevitably I ran out of time on my first playthrough and the game kicked me back to the main menu and had me start over, and I have to say it was a bit of a pain having to redo all of the puzzles that I'd already solved, but a couple of them are randomly generated, which does help alleviate the repetition, and I feel like the implementation of the 60-minute timer was overall a smart decision, as it really pushes you to work quickly and definitely builds tension as you get down into the last few minutes. When it comes down to the overall playtime of NEScape, you're probably looking at about an hour and a half in total. Like me, you'll probably fail your first attempt, and in your second attempt you'll race through the puzzles and have it wrapped up in about 30 minutes depending on how far you got. But being a puzzle game, it's not really designed for multiple playthroughs, so there is very little in the way of replayability with this one. Now, I've wanted to keep things brief with this review, but all in all I found NEScape to be a really enjoyable escape the room game. I had a few minor gripes with its control scheme, mainly with the item usage and not being able to switch between screens without clicking the edges of them, a function which I feel could have been mapped to the bumpers or triggers for the port. But overall I had a really fun time with this one. It's short but sweet, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's a fan of the genre. Now, with the game being originally developed for the NES, both the visuals and audio were designed around the limitations of the console, and so you're getting that genuine NES aesthetic with this one, and I have to say that the artwork and sound design is top notch, with some great use of colours in both the puzzle designs, as well as making key objects really stand out. Despite the limited colour palette, there's some great detail to the environments and objects, with you easily able to identify exactly what you're looking at, and to add to the overall authenticity of the experience, you even get some of that classic NES sprite flickering, which they could no doubt have fixed with a port but decided to leave in. On the audio side of things, there's very little in the way of sound effects outside of a few puzzles, but of what little there is put to good use and really helped to add some nice variety to them. And again, the game's music is reminiscent of the classic NES games and is really well composed. It adds an ominous atmosphere with its dark and creepy undertones, and it changes with each new chapter, which stops it becoming too monotonous. So overall, fantastic job all round with the audio and visuals with this one. So in conclusion then, if you enjoy escape the room type games, then you'll no doubt enjoy this one, especially if you're an NES era gamer and looking for that extra hit of nostalgia. The puzzles are all really well designed and allow for some logical progression through the game, and while the experience is somewhat short-lived, it's fun while it lasts and no major issues to speak of with this one. All in all, just a very solid and well-rounded puzzle experience. And so when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving NEScape 4 out of 5 stars. I've played plenty of escape the room puzzle games over the years, but for me NEScape is definitely one of the more standout and memorable examples, and I highly recommend checking it out if either you're a fan of the genre, or even if you're diving into it for the first time. And so that pretty much does it for this review of NEScape. So do let me know if you'll be picking it up down in the comments section below, and if you are a fan of the genre and know of any other good ones you can recommend on the Switch, feel free to share them too. But for now, drop a like if this one helped you out, subscribe for more Switch reviews and content, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.